My name is Bobby Trice, and I'm the Program Assistant for Quaker Outreach here at FCNL, the Friends Committee on National Legislation. We are a nonpartisan Quaker lobby in the public interest. We advocate in Congress to pass policies that reflect Quaker values, including stewardship. We seek that of God in each legislator, which is why our climate program is focusing on building bipartisan support for climate action in Congress. Today, I'm sitting down with Alicia Cannon, our Program Assistant for Sustainable Energy and the Environment. We're going to talk a little bit about carbon pricing legislation and why FCNL is advocating for that in regards to the environment. Alicia, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you care about climate change?
Yeah, definitely. So as Bobby said, my name is Alicia Cannon, and I'm the Program Assistant for Sustainable Energy and Environment. And I'm passionate about climate change because we only have a short window of time to really stave off the worst consequences. My climate journey started in 2012 when Hurricane Sandy blew through New Jersey, leaving destruction in her wake, including my house. A massive oak tree ricocheted off the roof of my bedroom and left a massive dent on top of 7 trees, blocking us from civilization and leaving us without power for 15 days. Yeah, so if we don't reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, there are going to be more climate exacerbated storms like that affecting our communities around the world and in our homes. And as a Catholic, I believe that we have a moral responsibility to address climate change because very vulnerable communities are seeing the impacts, and it's just not fair that we're not doing anything about it.
So, why else is it so important to be taking climate action right now?
Well, we're in the midst of a climate emergency. Every day I read about some frightening statistic or terrible story about a climate exacerbated event affecting communities across the world. And at FCNL, we recognize that climate change disproportionately impacts low income and people of color. We need to do something about it. If we don't reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, we are not going to have time to address climate change and stave off the worst consequences. So we believe that carbon pricing is one legislative and administrative tool that can be used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to address the injustices associated with climate change. So we think that carbon pricing should be a part of a broad policy suite in 2021 that we can use to decarbonize our economy and get to net zero emissions. Plus, it already has bipartisan support now.
Fantastic to hear that carbon pricing already has bipartisan support. Could you explain what carbon pricing is just a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. It can get a little wonky. So carbon pricing is a market-based approach that is used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by placing a price on carbon emissions. So there's a price placed on carbon emissions, and each year that price increases. So it's incentivizing a shift towards clean energy economy. Essentially, it makes it more expensive to pollute. And then we think that within a carbon pricing bill, there should be emissions targets, incremental targets every 2 to 3 years so that we reach the larger goal. And if we're not meeting those incremental targets, the price should increase on top of the yearly increase, again, ensuring that we hit the large goal of a certain amount of emissions reductions. So many economists agree that carbon pricing is a great tool, a cost-effective tool for reducing greenhouse gas emissions at the speed and scale that is necessary. And then, as a Quaker institution, we believe that carbon pricing bills should reflect the principles of stewardship, sustainability, justice and human dignity, and dialogue within legislation.
On the note of principles, what kind of carbon pricing bills is FCNL advocating for? What are we looking for in those bills?
Yeah. So, for context, the United States is the greatest historical emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So, obviously, we have a moral responsibility to address climate change and reduce our own country's greenhouse gas emissions. Lives and livelihoods are adversely affected because of our inaction. The least responsible and the least equipped are being the most affected by climate impacts. Like, how is that fair or just or anything that we stand for? So we want to make sure that a carbon price adequately protects vulnerable communities, that the health and economic well-being will not be harmed by a carbon price. So these vulnerable communities can include communities of color, rural communities, tribal nations and indigenous communities, immigrant communities, communities of people who are facing chronic illnesses, or people who are disabled, people who are not in the wage economy, and those living in poverty. Because of that, a carbon price cannot be fiscally regressive. I always like to say that vulnerable communities should not be harmed by a carbon tax, they should be helped.
Definitely. Vulnerable communities must be helped by a carbon price. So you already mentioned a little bit that this has some bipartisan support in Congress. Could you speak to that momentum a little bit more? How are we seeing this move?
Yeah, definitely. So right now there are 7 carbon pricing bills in Congress, 4 of which that have bipartisan support, and many of them reflect FCNL's principles, including protection of vulnerable communities. They include measures like job transition assistance for former fossil fuel workers, or transition assistance for fossil fuel dependent communities, money for low-income households to offset higher energy costs, and like general community resiliency. It's really exciting, and we are excited by the fact that there are 2 times as many carbon pricing bills in the 116th Congress as there were in the 115th Congress. It demonstrates to us that our work is working, our efforts are working, and it motivates us to continue to advocate for why carbon pricing should be part of a broader climate change solution.
So why is now the time to be advocating for carbon pricing?
So many reasons. So we have seen unprecedented climate action in the last few months, from the wildly successful climate strikes, which I was a part of, and seeing Greta Thunberg fearlessly admonish world leaders and call for a need for climate action. Because of public outcry, there have been more briefings and hearings on climate-related topics than ever before in Congress. There's this overall want for something. So we need to make sure that carbon pricing is part of that something. So 2021 is the earliest that we see that meaningful climate legislation can pass. But even then, we're going to face a divided Congress. So bipartisan support is crucial. So 2020 is critical for climate action. We need to lay the groundwork. So even though it's an election year and things might not pass, and it might seem that Congress is especially stagnant, 2020 determines what is possible for 2021. 2020 is a time to build relationships with your members of Congress and educate them on why carbon pricing is necessary to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at the scale and speed that is necessary, and that it should be a part of a broader climate change solution.
Thank you so much, Alicia. That was great. So, audience out there, now you know how carbon pricing is a bipartisan climate change solution that you can help make a reality. Keep building that momentum with us and join us in advocating for carbon pricing in 2020. You can take action to restore the Earth right now. Visit our website at fcnl.org/carbon pricing to write your members of Congress about passing a carbon pricing bill. If you're ready to take the next steps in your advocacy, you can check out our website. We have a whole suite of resources that can help you advance your environmental advocacy. Visit fcnl.org/climate to read about our climate advocacy work and to learn how you can publish media pieces to raise awareness about environmental issues in your community. You can visit fcnl.org/actlocal to get resources on how to drop by your local member of Congress's office to raise the issue of carbon pricing and tell them now is the time to be passing carbon pricing legislation. If you're not sure about your next steps or where to get started, you can connect with FCNL's organizing team at fcnl.org/connect. We'll have a conversation about the best way for you to make change in your community. We're here to support you. The climate crisis cannot wait. Thank you so much for tuning in and making change with us. Bye-bye.